old housewife with no children. I work as well, balancing both roles. Today marks our 5th wedding anniversary, which also happens to be my husband Everett's birthday. Everett is the same age as me. Everett is a charming salesman working for a well-known company, where he's doing quite well. However, his job often requires him to work late and entertain clients, so we rarely spend time together. Our wedding was a modest ceremony held on a weekday, attended only by close family and a few friends. Both of us had jobs that required us to work on weekends, making it difficult to find a suitable time. Everett was particularly insistent on keeping it simple. For our anniversary and his birthday, I asked him to come home early. I even took half a day off from work to prepare. I bought his favorite Wagyu steak, wine, and cake from a department store and set up a beautifully decorated table. I waited eagerly for Everett to return home. However, despite my repeated requests, he never showed up. Instead, I received a single email from him, saying that he had urgent work and would be staying at the office. I was disappointed but tried to be understanding since it was work-related. I cleaned up the uneaten dinner and went to bed, though I couldn't shake a feeling of doubt, especially since he had told me he wasn't that busy. The next morning, I went to work as usual, but my messages to his phone went unread, and my calls went unanswered. Growing more worried, I called his office and was stunned to learn that he had resigned the day before and had apparently accepted a job in a neighboring prefecture. I hadn't heard anything about this. I rushed home and noticed his shoes by the entrance. My heart raced as I entered his room, only to find him packing his belongings into a suitcase. "What's going on?" I asked in shock, my eyes wide with disbelief. Everett simply clicked his tongue and handed me divorce papers, saying, "So, you've already figured it out." "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling with shock. With cold, emotionless eyes, he echoed my question before bluntly stating, "Let's get a divorce." "Why? What for?" I demanded, still reeling from his sudden declaration. "I'm tired of you not fulfilling your role as a wife," he replied, his tone sharp and unforgiving. "You put work first. You barely cook. You only do laundry once a week. And the house is always dusty. I don't need a wife like that." "Wait a minute," I protested, feeling a surge of frustration. "For the past 2 years, I've made dinner and waited for you. But you always said you had already eaten and refused to have any. That's why I stopped cooking." "Even so, it's a wife's duty to cook and wait," he retorted, dismissing my explanation. "Besides, your cooking is terrible, so I started eating out." I shuddered at the harshness in his voice, remembering how he used to compliment my cooking when we were first married. Desperately, I reminded him, we agreed when we got married that I would do the laundry and cleaning on my days off, Wednesdays and Thursdays, but he just rolled his eyes and scoffed. "So, I'm supposed to tolerate a dirty house from Friday to Tuesday? That's ridiculous." "What's happened to you all of a sudden?" I asked, bewildered by his sudden change in attitude. "I never imagined you'd want me to quit my job after 5 years of marriage." "When I got a new job offer, I saw it as the perfect opportunity," he said coldly. "An opportunity for what? A divorce?" I was stunned. Everett had never complained about my work or housekeeping before, and I had seen no signs that he was unhappy or thinking of ending our marriage. "You never noticed how dissatisfied I was," he said, his voice icy. "I don't need a wife like that. I've rented an apartment near my new job, so I won't be coming back to this place." With that, he pushed past me, standing in front of the door with his suitcase, and left the house without looking back. I stood there, utterly stunned, unable to grasp what had just happened. A week later, I attended my high school reunion. I wasn't really in the mood to go, but I had already paid the membership fee. Besides, I hadn't been able to reach Everett since that day, and my frustration was growing with each passing day. I thought the reunion might be a good way to clear my mind. When I arrived, I saw that some of my classmates were divorced or single mothers, yet they were all leading strong and resilient lives. Up until that point, all I had hoped for was to mend my relationship with Everett, but as I thought about it more, I realized that if we reconciled, I would likely have to move with him to his new job location. In that case, staying at my current job would be impossible due to the long daily commute, even though it was just in the neighboring prefecture. On the other hand, After working for 17 years since graduating from junior college and earning a decent salary, it would be nearly impossible to find a job that offered the same income in the new location. Everett had completely shut me out, and I began to wonder if it was time to let go. What made my decision final was a phone call from Everett, pressuring me to move out. We had been living in a rented apartment, where Everett was listed as the primary tenant. The lease renewal period was approaching, and it seemed the real estate agent had contacted him about it. I told them we'd be moving out in a month, so make sure everything is cleared out by then, he said bluntly. I'm still living here, and you didn't even consult me, I protested. His response was cold and dismissive. I'm the one renting it. I don't need to consult you. That was the moment I knew it was truly over. Fine, I'll pack up my things this weekend or next, I replied, feeling defeated. Make sure to get rid of not just your stuff, but everything left in my room and all the furniture, he added, his tone sharp. I was taken aback by his nerve. What are you talking about? You originally rented this place when you were single, and most of the furniture has been here since then. The other furniture and appliances were bought with your credit card. I'll take care of disposing of the items I primarily used, but you're responsible for getting rid of the rest and covering the disposal costs, I shot back. Without another word, he hung up on me. I couldn't believe how selfish he was, taking only what was precious to him and leaving the entire cleanup to me. This made me more determined than ever to go through with the divorce. Over the weekend, I began sorting through the closet, reminiscing about the happy times we had shared since our marriage. Among the items were things that belonged to both Everett and me. As I was going through them, I stumbled upon his high school graduation album. I suddenly realized that all the friends Everett had introduced me to were from after his college days. Absent-mindedly, I flipped through the pages of his graduation album, and that's when I noticed something unexpected. I submitted the divorce papers and informed Everett via email. A week later, I received a response from him in the evening, along with a picture. The image was of a marriage registration form with his name and that of another woman. I was stunned and stared at the screen in disbelief when my phone rang. It was Everett. Did you see it? He asked. What does this mean? I demanded, still in shock. It's exactly what it looks like, he replied casually. I just had a wedding ceremony and remarried that woman. You've got to be kidding, I said, incredulous. She's incredibly beautiful, wealthy, and has a wonderful personality, he boasted. She asked me to marry her as soon as our divorce was finalized. This picture is proof. Isn't it amazing? So, you were cheating on me while we were still married? I asked, my voice trembling with anger. I'm popular, unlike you, who only has your job going for you, he sneered. Oh, by the way, her father built us a house on their property, and I transferred to her hometown with his help. It's a mid-sized company, but I'm an executive there. Everett was clearly eager to brag about his new marriage to his wealthy affair partner, but as he spoke, a wave of intense anger surged within me. He had blamed me for the failure of our marriage and used that as an excuse to divorce me, but it was also he could remarry his affair partner. He admitted that they had been seeing each other for over 2 years. They had met at a pub where he was out with coworkers, and she was one of 4 women sitting at a nearby table. Apparently, when Everett accidentally spilled his drink on himself, she had kindly wiped it off, sparking their conversation. She's the same age as us, but she's incredibly beautiful and looks a decade younger, he continued, as if rubbing salt in the wound. She wiped my clothes with a pretty handkerchief, and when I took her out to dinner to thank her, I found out she was the daughter of a landowner. She had entered into an arranged marriage at her parents' suggestion but was distressed by her husband's infidelity. After realizing that she needed to improve herself, she became someone completely different from you. I was immediately drawn to her, Everett explained, revealing that he had aggressively pursued her after that. She began dating Everett while still married to her husband, without getting a divorce. Isn't it normal to question a woman who dates 2 men while supposedly being devoted to her husband? I asked. But Everett, blinded by love, hadn't noticed anything wrong. A woman who doesn't support her man is no good, he retorted. You prioritize work and don't care about your husband. You're just not right for me. So, you can't stand on your own, and you expect me to support you? I shot back, unable to hold back my frustration. Everett seemed irritated as well and replied, "Ah, I'm so glad I'm finally free from a woman like you. Stella is the best. After all." "Stella? Is that her name?" I asked. "Yeah, it's written with the characters for double and flower, like double cherry blossoms. She was born when the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. Her parents have great taste in names, they're true celebrities," Everett said, his voice filled with admiration for her unique name. As I listened to Everett gush about her, something clicked in my memory. "Did you really marry such an amazing woman? You're not lying, are you?" I asked, pretending to sound impressed. Everett's pride was clearly wounded by the insinuation. "She's the best wife with an impeccable family background and a great personality. Just look at her elegant beauty," he insisted and sent me a picture of the two of them at their wedding. There was no doubt it was her. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "What's so funny? This is proof that we really got married," Everett exclaimed, sounding defensive. Sure, it's real," I replied, struggling to contain my laughter. "Hey, stop laughing, we really got married, and there's a baby in her belly," he added, clearly annoyed. "What? No way," I said, unable to stop laughing. "Ah, I get it. Losing me must have made you go crazy," Everett said, interpreting my laughter in a way that suited him. Then, dreamily, he added, "In 3 months, we'll have a baby girl. She'll definitely be as beautiful as Stella. Well, even if she looks like you instead, she'll still be beautiful." Everett has a sweet, idol-like handsome face, and for some reason, he suddenly became flustered and said, "No, she doesn't need to look like me." Hearing that, I burst out laughing again. "Go crazy on your own. Goodbye," Everett snapped before hanging up the phone. Eventually, he'll figure out why I was laughing, and I can't wait for that day. After that, we had some disputes over alimony and the division of property, but with the help of a lawyer, I managed to secure a substantial settlement from Everett. He agreed to pay his share of the alimony, not wanting to cause Stella any emotional distress during her pregnancy. 2 years passed without any contact, and then I finally received a desperate email from him. "Please, Scarlett, I beg you, please listen to me." Reluctantly, I answered the phone call that followed right after the email. As I expected, it was about the child he had with Stella. "Well, kids tend to look like their parents, right?" I said. "Of course, who else would they look like?" he replied nervously. Apparently, the baby girl didn't resemble the beautiful Stella at all. "She's only 2 years old, right? She'll change a lot as she grows." I tried to reassure him, though I could tell he wasn't convinced. He found it odd that there was no resemblance at all, and I suppose that made sense. "Doesn't the baby look like you?" I asked, struggling to keep my laughter in check. Everett suddenly panicked and blurted out, "No, she doesn't, but it's okay that she doesn't look like me." He had secretly done a DNA test to check if Stella had been unfaithful, but the results confirmed that both Everett and Stella were undeniably the child's parents. "So, there's no doubt she's your child," I said. But Everett wasn't ready to let the conversation end there. "Hey, when I told you 2 years ago that Stella was pregnant, you laughed a lot. Do you know something?" he asked, pressing me for an answer. Wow, he remembered that well, I thought. Actually, Stella and I went to the same high school and were in the same grade. We were never in the same class during those 3 years, so I didn't know her well, but I do remember that she was the daughter of a landlord and had a rather haughty, unpleasant personality. At a class reunion about 2 years ago, the topic of Stella's plastic surgery came up. Stella, with her single eyelids, small eyes, button nose, and slight overbite, had been self-conscious about her looks. Apparently, after high school, she underwent several cosmetic procedures at a famous clinic in New York. She didn't attend the reunion, so I didn't see her in person, but a friend later sent me before and after pictures of her transformation. American cosmetic surgery really is incredible. When I told Everett about this, he didn't believe me at first, but then it hit him. He had never seen any childhood photos or graduation albums of hers. Was I deceived? Damn it, he muttered, realizing the truth. Stella had played the role of the sweet, demure woman while they were dating, but it turns out she had cheated on him multiple times and had been divorced before. Worse, she had been sued for alimony by several of her ex-husband's wives. I'm going to confront her, Everett declared. Maybe you shouldn't, I suggested. Huh, why not? He asked, confused. Well, the child doesn't look like you either, right? Usually, girls are said to resemble their fathers, I pointed out, making Everett fall silent. She can't look like you, you've had plastic surgery too. How did you, he began, but I cut him off. When I moved out of the apartment we lived in 2 years ago, I found your high school graduation album. You looked like a completely different person, and I was shocked. After seeing that album, I finally understood why he never introduced me to his college friends, insisted on having a modest wedding, and only invited a few colleagues from work. Everett had likely undergone plastic surgery while in college and had been afraid his past would be exposed by his old friends. I don't think there's anything wrong with plastic surgery, I told him, but you have to consider that your child might inherit your original features. So, what should I do now? Everett asked, sounding desperate. What do you mean? What should you do? Just be a normal father. The DNA results confirmed that the child is definitely yours. With that, I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number and email address. It's astonishing how narrow-minded he is, just because his child's appearance didn't match his expectations. A year later, a friend of mine, who has a child the same age as Everett's daughter, showed me a picture of her little one starting kindergarten. The child was adorable. Interestingly, Everett and Stella's daughter didn't resemble either of them after their surgeries. According to my friend, who had become close to Stella, even Stella had expected her child to look more like Everett post-surgery. My friend mentioned that she often had to listen to Stella complain, saying things like, I shouldn't have given birth to such a child. It's hard to believe how awful they both are. On top of that, it seems Everett has already cheated again, and now Stella is even seeking divorce advice from my friend. Everett is such a fool. If they do end up getting divorced, he'll be stuck paying alimony and child support. And considering Stella's wealthy background, who knows how much she could demand if she gets a good lawyer. What's worse is that, according to my friend, even the local kids know about Stella's plastic surgery, and they've started excluding her daughter at kindergarten, telling her, your mom is actually ugly. It's a small comfort that Stella's parents seem to love their granddaughter, but it's truly sad for the child. Still, it's none of my business anymore. As for me, I managed to rent an apartment in a location that's convenient for commuting. With the shorter distance, I can now clean and do laundry after work, leaving my days off completely free to enjoy my own interests. I've also rekindled a friendship with a divorced classmate I reconnected with at the reunion, and I'm enjoying a leisurely and fulfilling life.
From today, I'll be living with Lily and Liam. Others should just go into a care facility. Suddenly, Mason, Lily, and Liam barged into our house and said that. Why do I have to leave this house? It's because we can no longer go on as husband and wife. What? According to Mason, I've always made him do household chores like a housekeeper. So basically, I've been suffering from psychological abuse by Harper. That's terrible. Poor Mason. Lily said mockingly, pretending to wipe tears that weren't there. But I can't take it anymore. I'm divorcing Harper. I'll get my fair share of compensation in the divorce settlement, and we'll divide the assets, starting with this house. I've endured this life for 2 years. I deserve it. That's right. Who's going to pay the living expenses? $3,000? The next day, I got multiple calls from an angry Mason and his sister, who are now in a $2 million care facility. My name is Harper. I just turned 40 not long ago. I'm a day trader, an investor dealing in currency and stock trading. Thanks to that, my work is going well, and I can say I've accumulated a modest fortune. I was born with a chronic illness, not immediately life-threatening, but it means I can't overdo things and should ideally avoid childbirth. The risk of having a child is too high. My parents never hid this fact from me. From a young age, I've faced my illness and been raised to live life with resolve. My dad, who worked at a securities firm, taught me about stocks, enabling me to do this job now. My husband's name is Mason. He's 30. He's 10 years younger than me, and we've been married for 2 years. Our meeting was when Mason joined as an employee at a restaurant I frequented. I thought he was handsome, but nothing more than a customer-employee relationship. But somehow, he became fond of me, moving from friend to lover, and before I knew it, we were considering marriage. I thought I couldn't go on like this. I thought it wasn't right, given that I can't have children. Mason was still in his 20s. I couldn't let him give up the possibility of having his own children for me. I refused his proposal at first, but then Mason said, "I proposed because I want to live with you, Harper. If I wanted children, I would have chosen someone else from the start. Don't you trust me?" I was so happy, I cried, and I accepted the marriage. Right after we got married, Mason said, "I'll quit my job and take care of all the housework. You know I'm good at cooking, right? It will make your work easier." Indeed, Mason was as good at cooking as he claimed. He had an interest in cooking and joined a restaurant to learn more. He wasn't working in the kitchen, but he learned a lot by watching the chefs. Our first real connection was over a similar interest. I mentioned my brother owned a restaurant, and Mason was genuinely interested, hoping to own his own one day. I thought it was admirable. But when I asked what would happen to his dream if he quit his job, he replied, "What, do you think staying at home means I can't own a restaurant? That's disrespectful to housewives. The idea is outdated. Besides, I don't want to be away from you. I want to spend as much time with you as possible." Weakened by his affection, I agreed to his proposal. Initially, it worked well with me working and Mason handling household chores. But gradually, Mason stopped doing housework. The once tidy living room became cluttered with books and games, and Mason started spending nights playing games in front of the TV. At first, it was occasional, but it got worse, and eventually, he completely reversed his day-night schedule. "Mason, haven't you been a bit too much lately?" Sorry. I'm just really into this game right now, and I'm trying to beat it. Can't you let it slide until I finish? Please, I'm begging you." Saying this in a coaxing tone, I reluctantly agreed to wait until he finished that game. But before I knew it, he was engrossed in a new game. The room is still a mess. When we first got married, Mason would carefully clean and make the space comfortable. What on earth happened? I put up with this for several months, but one day I decided to speak up. "Mason, we need to talk." "Huh? What about?" "I'm married, an adult man, but now he's acting like a child. You should play games after you've done your homework." I felt like a mom scolding him. "We're supposed to be a couple, equals. You're the one who said you'd quit your job to take care of the house. Then please keep that promise. I'm not saying don't play, just do your tasks first, please." After I poured out my thoughts, Mason thought for a bit and then said, "All right, I understand. Sorry, I was wrong. I got a bit too comfortable. I'll do the housework first before gaming. I'll make sure of it." True to his word, Mason went back to his old ways, but something was different. He always seemed unhappy. In the beginning, he'd happily cook and proudly show off the clean house, but now he just finishes his tasks and retreats to his room. He used to play games on the living room TV or read books on the sofa, but now he's playing online games on a computer in his personal room. Setting up dinner on the table, I've started to hear this more often. "Sorry, I've made a gaming appointment today. I don't have time, so eat alone. Oh, just leave the dishes. I'll wash them." Watching Mason walk into his room, I eat alone, feeling lonely. Even delicious food loses its taste this way. But since he's keeping his promise and doing the housework, I can't complain. And it's not just about meals anymore. "Tonight, I have an online gaming appointment with friends. I don't know when it'll end, so go to sleep first." Saying that, he doesn't return to the bedroom. It's been like this almost every night. During the day, he goes out alone. When I ask where he's going, he just says shopping and doesn't return until night. But even then, he always prepares my meal. It feels like sarcasm. Since I only asked him to take care of the house, with cleaning, laundry, and cooking all done, it's hard to complain. But this isn't life as a family. It's like living with a live-in housekeeper. Now we hardly even talk. I just eat the cold, prepared meals alone, change into clean clothes, and blankly sit in the tidy room. I think I'd be less lonely alone. Looking at Mason's door, I feel sad and tear up. But still, I hope things will settle down. We'll return to our normal lives, I think, and silently endure. Then, after a year of this, Mason suddenly makes this declaration. I'm going to live with Lily and Liam from today. The rest can go to a care facility. Suddenly, Mason, sister-in-law Lily, and sister-in-law's husband Liam came into our house and said that. It made no sense. I thought Mason moving here for our marriage meant Lily and Liam were moving to the apartment he left. Wait, you mean you're leaving this house to go back to your old apartment? Confused, I asked that, and the three of them looked at each other and laughed. No, I'm going to live here with Lily and Liam, the three of us. It's Papa who has to leave the house. It's becoming less and less clear to me. Why do I have to leave this house? It's because we can no longer continue as a couple. What? According to Mason, I've been making him do all the housework like a housekeeper. In other words, I've been suffering from psychological abuse by Harper. That's terrible, poor Mason. Lily said this exaggeratedly, pretending to wipe away non-existent tears. But I can't take it anymore. I'm divorcing Harper. I'll get proper compensation in the divorce, and a share of the assets, starting with this house. I've endured such a life for 2 years, so I have the right to claim it. Yeah, that's right. Mason asserts, and Lily echoes in support. Beside them, Liam is just watching Mason and Lily with a sleazy grin. I see. That's how it is. I somehow feel like I understand what's happening. Maybe Mason planned this since the beginning of our marriage. To charm me into marrying him, then divorce at a convenient time, and like he just said, to gain various things. I never intended to get married in my life. Knowing I couldn't have children, and not being particularly good-looking, nor do I think my personality is especially great. I don't think any man would want to marry such a woman. So I decided to live alone and devoted my life to work and hobbies. I have some friends and ordinary relationships with my parents and brother Caleb. After Dad retired, my parents moved to the countryside and now live with Caleb and his wife. Caleb worked in a restaurant for several years before marrying and starting his own small restaurant. When choosing the place, Caleb decided to live with our parents. They built 2 houses on a large plot of land, so even though it's a shared property, they're separate houses. Since we were born and raised in this town near the city center where I live now, it may be strange to call it going back home, but when I visit, I enjoy my time with my parents, Caleb, his wife, and my nephews. So I never felt lonely, but I was shocked to find myself married to a man 10 years my junior. Looking back, I guess I was smoothly deceived. As I listened to Mason and the others, I couldn't help but laugh at my own foolishness. After all, Mason approached me too suddenly and got too deeply involved in my life, like a made-up story. At first, I was cautious, but I was tricked by Mason, who acted like a needy puppy. Now, how should I turn the tables? How should I fight back? As a day trader, it's my job to read the situation, anticipate the future, and steer things in a positive direction. I've always won my battles this way, so I can handle this too. I'll make it work. Seeing me looking down and deep in thought, Mason and the others continued to hurl ugly insults.
Hey, why the silence?
Come on, stop packing. Get ready to leave. Maybe for now, I'll leave this house. Understood. I will leave. For now, I gather only the essentials. Clothes and a laptop for work.
Here, sign this.
Mason handed me the divorce papers. I'll sign and submit the divorce papers. I'll contact you if there's anything else needed. With Mason and the others sneering at me, I left the apartment that I own. I have a place to go. I head there first and think. I'm sure I'll be contacted soon, so I'll deal with the rest later. I drove out of the apartment parking lot and headed towards my destination. I slept peacefully for the first time in a while. I woke up later than usual and had brunch. The food here is always delicious. It's been over 2 years since I've come here, since I got married. First, I sent Mason a text about my current location and that my lawyer would handle further discussions. Then, I immediately received a phone call, faster than I thought.
Hey, what's going on?
I can hear Lily shouting from behind Mason, but I can't make out what she's saying. What do you mean, what's going on?
Don't play dumb. Where are you right now?
So they reacted to that. I came here because I was kicked out of the house. Is that a problem?
It's not that.
Mason continues with an irritated voice.
That's a members-only luxury resort hotel, isn't it? Why are you there?
Why? Because I'm a member here.
I haven't heard of such a thing.
That's because I never mentioned it. Indeed, this is a quite luxurious hotel, but it's not just a hotel. It's a luxury resort hotel with care services. In other words, it's also a high-class nursing facility. There's even a hospital attached. You can stay here like a regular hotel, but if you buy it, you can live like in a regular house. To get a place here, you need at least $2 million, and it was quite a topic in the media for a while. So when Mason saw the name of the hotel, he must have researched and called.
Why are you a member of such a place?
Why? Because I paid for the rights here. Mason is making an indignant and incomprehensible noise on the other end. Someone said it, right? Go into a nursing home or something. So I decided to live here. You can keep living in that house if you want, but the monthly rent is $3,000, so make sure you can pay it.
What? No, that's your house. What do you mean, rent?
I've decided to sell it. I've been thinking about it for a while now, and it seems like I won't be living there anymore. I never planned to get married, and I bought this place when the hotel was built, to not be a burden to anyone in my old age. I already owned the apartment I lived in until yesterday, but I rushed to secure this facility, not knowing when it might be available again. So I took the plunge. I thought of moving here when I got a bit older. It's a bit far from the city center, so it's a bit early to retire and settle down. So while I'm still able to work, I treated this place like a holiday home. I've come here occasionally for a break, but kept it a secret from everyone. Only my accountant and lawyer know.
Give that place to me.
As I was thinking, Mason suddenly said that.
That's my settlement, okay? I'll take that too. No, I can give you back the apartment. I'll live there.
Such a convenient argument. Who would agree to such a thing? I'm astonished. I have no intention of giving it to you. Also, please do not contact me directly from now on. Communicate through the lawyer. You have the contact information, right? Bye. I hung up the phone and turned off my mobile phone. Now maybe I'll go to the spa and get rid of this fatigue. Not just from yesterday, but from these past 2 years. To my surprise, Mason, Lily, and Liam showed up at the hotel the next day. Mason seemed to insist at the front desk that he had the right to enter his family. I had asked not to let anyone in without my permission, and they wouldn't let people in without consent anyway. It's a really well-managed facility. I thought about completely ignoring them, but didn't want to cause trouble for the facility. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet in the hotel lobby. There are other people around, and the concierge is right there. If anything happens, I can get help. When I asked what they wanted, Mason said with a friendly smile,
Harper, you're really mean. If you had such a place, you should have told me. Why did you hide it?
Yeah, why did you hide it? Lily joined in with the same expression as Mason. Looking at them, they really do resemble each other, brother and sister, both in their facial features and their pettiness. It doesn't matter anymore, so there's no need to talk about it. Please leave, you're bothering me.
We're a couple, aren't we?
Ex-couple. I told Mason that I had filed for divorce on my way here yesterday. So you and I have nothing to do with each other anymore.
Why would you file it on your own?
Why on my own? They were the ones who issued the divorce papers and handed them to me for signing. It's okay. We can just get remarried.
Yeah, let's do that.
Lily showed off her knowledge, and Mason happily joined in. I refused. Saying just that, I stood up, ignoring the three who tried to follow, and decided to return to my room. Mason and the others were stopped by the concierge.
I won't give up. I'll come here every day and show you how much I love you, Harper.
Mason, you're so cool. I walked back to my room, with their ridiculous drama playing out behind me, feeling uncomfortable. Then, I immediately contacted my lawyer to get things moving. I decided it was best to act quickly. I never thought Mason and his group would act this fast. Their actions are unnecessarily swift. From the next day, Mason and his group appeared at the facility every day, waiting for me in the lobby. Even after issuing a restraining order through my lawyer, Mason's group took surprising actions.
I was deceived into marrying Harper. I demand settlement money.
According to Mason's claim, he didn't know I couldn't have children, and wouldn't have married me if he had known, so he demanded settlement money. If I didn't pay, he threatened to report it to the police as marriage fraud. I handed a recording to my lawyer.
I proposed to you, Harper, because I wanted to live with you. If I wanted children from marriage, I would have chosen someone else from the start. Or do you not trust me that much?
This recording clearly captured Mason's words during his proposal. Mason was,
Why is there such a recording?
Apparently angry, but it was just due to my bad habit. You never know what might happen in this world, so whenever something seemed likely to happen, I just run a digital voice recorder, just a habit. I, who trusted Mason, used to listen to this recording alone and reminisce about those times. Never thought it would come in handy like this. Mason then claimed,
I was forced to quit my job and do housework after marriage. It's psychological abuse. Pay me settlement money. If you don't pay, I'll report it to the police.
I submitted another recording.
I'll quit my job and do all the housework. I don't hate working at the restaurant, but wouldn't it make it easier for you to work? You know I'm good at cooking, right?
The recording clearly captured Mason's declaration. Mason then demanded money for the mental anguish caused by the eavesdropping of these recordings.
If you don't pay, I'll report the eavesdropping crime to the police.
Unfortunately, there's no such crime as eavesdropping. There are penalties for using eavesdropped content to cause harm, or for breaking and entering to plant bugs. But eavesdropping itself is not a crime. After failing in everything,
Then pay me the divorce settlement for the divorce itself,
Mason said. But Mason himself initiated the divorce without any valid reason, suddenly handing me a signed divorce petition and telling me to leave the house. Of course, I recorded that conversation as well. The lawyer explained that, considering everything, it's more likely that Mason would be the one owing money. Finally crying,
At least give me a share of the property,
Mason begged. I agreed to the proposal. Leave the apartment for a while so we can properly assess the property and calculate the results. We'll meet at the lawyer's office once it's done. After saying that, the three of them quickly left the house, and in their absence, I sold the apartment's furniture and, as declared, put the apartment up for sale. The apartment sold for more than expected due to rising local property values. When Mason and his group saw the total assets and sale price amounting to over $9 million, they were overjoyed.
So I get half of this?
Of course not. This was just the total amount of assets I had accumulated on my own. The lawyer handed Mason the calculation of his share, and he became angry.
Why? Why don't I get anything?
The lawyer carefully explained to Mason. Most of my assets were accumulated before our marriage, so Mason had no right to them. He had rights to half of the income after marriage, but after deducting living expenses and necessary costs, and the divorce settlement I demanded, he actually owed money.
Why do I have to pay the divorce settlement?
This too was explained by the lawyer with documentation. Mason had been cheating. The other woman was someone he met in an online game. Mason had apparently told her that I was 10 years older and sick, and that if something happened to me, he would inherit everything, and even now he could use as much money as he wanted. The woman didn't take it seriously, but was shaking as she said she'd played along because Mason gave her an allowance. Under the condition of not making any claims against her, she agreed to testify. Mason, you said things like this, didn't you? The recording of the woman's testimony was played. It went like this. Mason had told the woman about my health condition, which would be life-threatening if I were to have children. Furthermore, he planned to plead with me to bear his child if necessary, thinking I would do it at the risk of my own life. She testified that he said this with a laugh. Be thankful I'm not reporting this to the police. Thanks to you, I had some fun dreams, and Mason's cooking was good, so I won't ask for anything more. Mason accepted everything. Thus, my short marriage came to an unhappy end. I don't know what happened to Mason, Lily, and Liam afterward, nor do I want to. As long as they never appear before me again, that's fine. Pressing them further would only make me feel miserable. Honestly, it was quite a mental blow, but fortunately, I had plenty of money and time to heal. I embarked on a world tour on a luxury cruise ship. On the ship, I met various people from around the world, saw different places, and had a great time. Some were wonderful, and I almost got the wrong idea. But remembering Mason, I restrained myself. I didn't want to get hurt over the same thing again. That's what I decided. After returning home, I started a new life. I lived leisurely at the resort hotel for a while, but soon got bored. I'm only 40 years old. When I think about it, I'm still young. Living with younger Mason made me always conscious of my age. On the year-long cruise, I met a lady who was over 80 and still looking for new love. At half her age, why should I give up on everything? Though it ended badly, falling in love was fun. Why should I give up that joy, that possibility, just because I got hurt by someone like him? I felt that way. As I was thinking, my mobile phone blinked, indicating a text message. It was from a man I met on the ship. He was coming to America and asked if we could have dinner. He had been on the ship with his high school daughter. We got along well and often spent time together at the ports. Maybe having a daughter feels like this. I remember enjoying our time together with that thought. I replied, I would love to meet, feeling a little excitement. From the halfway point of my life, I take another new step forward.
You've inherited over $3 million, right? We've already started building a duplex for us to live together. I've even included the kitchen of my dreams. My mother-in-law says in a tone that's almost dreamy. I've quit my job. I'm planning to start a business with the inheritance that Ashley has received. My husband announces, looking oddly pleased. Well, wait a minute. I've told you I haven't received any inheritance yet, right? You've quit your job and you're building a duplex. What's happening? Don't lie. It's clear you've inherited. How about we take a trip before the house gets built? How about Hawaii? My father-in-law chimes in, adding to the growing confusion with my husband and my mother-in-law. What on earth are these people thinking? They want to use the precious inheritance I received from my mother and spend it on whatever they please? Even though I was filled with rage, I didn't know what to do. The story goes back a few months ago. My name is Ashley. I'm 38 years old and work as a high school teacher. I married David, an office worker who is 2 years older than me, 12 years ago. Soon after we got married, our only daughter Julie was born, and since then, my days have been filled with work and child rearing. Today is the day I'm visiting my hospitalized mother with my daughter. Oh, Grandma, it's been a while. Well, Julie, welcome. My mother, lying in her bed, lovingly strokes Julie's hair. Her hand is noticeably thinner, and her complexion looks poor. Next to my mother's bed stands a middle-aged man wearing glasses and a suit. As I nod towards him, he returns the nod and leaves the room. Mom, who is that man? Just an acquaintance. Don't worry about it. More importantly, Ashley, are you still doing well? And David, is he well? My mother's eyes, a shade close to blue, sparkle softly as she smiles. She met my father, who ran an import-export business overseas and came to the U.S. as his bride. Raising a child in a foreign country must have been hard, but my mother and father worked together to bring me up. One of the reasons I am able to work as a teacher today is because my mother taught me many things since I was small. I am deeply grateful to my parents, who raised me with love in a wealthy family. After my father passed away a few years ago, my mother, now alone, fell ill and was hospitalized. She transferred the business to a relative, and now she spends her remaining days quietly in the hospital. I'm fine, Mom. Is there anything you need? Just having you and Julie come to see me is more than enough. After having such a conversation and spending a good amount of time talking with my mother, Julie and I headed home. Julie talks to my mother about things that happened at school and the book she has recently read. She's at that tricky age of 10, but our relationship is good. Even if I take away my parental bias, I think she is a bright and honest child who is growing up well. We're home! Oh, welcome back! How's my mother-in-law doing? David asks as he greets us. Mom is as usual. How about you? Your seminar? Was it? Oh, I heard some good stuff. Looking forward to the next one. Recently, my husband has been attending seminars on quitting his job and starting a side business. He must want more money, but the company he works for will not top tier. It's not bad, and with my salary, we're doing just fine. I find it distasteful when he is so greedy for money, which I suppose he gets from his parents. Ever since we got married, I've been put off by his parents' excessive stinginess and their habit of begging for small amounts of money whenever we see them. So, I've been keeping my distance. They've never given Julie any Christmas gifts. Fortunately, my in-laws live far away, so we don't have to interact much. And my husband does well with household chores, so I guess it's okay. As long as I have my mother, my husband, Julie, and our modest but ordinary life, I'm content. Then, one day, I got a call from the hospital. My mother's condition had suddenly worsened, and she was in critical condition. When my family rushed to the hospital, my mother was barely breathing. Mom? Mom? Grandma? No! Ashley, I always wanted you to be happy. Cherish Julie more than anything. I love you. In the end, those were my mother's last words. My mother, who raised me with all her heart with my father. My mother, who adored Julie from the bottom of her heart. My mother's face in the coffin was peaceful, and all I could do was cry. Julie was by my side, crying with me. A little while after my mother passed away, an envelope arrived at our house. A law firm? Ashley was perplexed as she opened the envelope from an unfamiliar sender. Inside was a document stating, "I have been entrusted with your mother's will, which leaves all of her inheritance to you." Ashley and her mother had never discussed the subject of inheritance before, so she was taken aback. However, since the letter had indeed arrived, she decided to visit the law firm on her own. "Hello, I'm the attorney, Ed." The man who appeared was the middle-aged gentleman with glasses who had been present when she had visited her mother in the hospital. "You were in my mother's hospital room before." Ashley questioned the man with the familiar face. "Yes, we met in the hospital room, actually, from that time. I was entrusted by your mother." Hearing Ed's kind voice, Ashley found herself on the verge of tears. And then, I was shocked beyond belief. Whoa! 500 million? Yes, Ashley, when your father passed away, you waived your right to the inheritance, so your mother could receive it all, right? When you add that inheritance to your mother's personal assets, even after deducting taxes, this is the amount. Your mother has named you as the sole heir. My parents had indeed been wealthy, but I hadn't imagined that they had left such an inheritance. I had never asked my parents for money after getting married and avoided the topic of inheritance as it seemed unlucky. Feeling dizzy, I realized this must be an expression of love from my mother. With that thought, I left the procedures to Ed. Your mother cared about you more than anything. She instructed me to assist you if necessary. Please feel free to discuss anything with me. Thank you. I appreciate your help. Ashley bowed her head several times to Ed and left the room. Time passed, and it was around the time of her mother's 49th day memorial service. Her husband, David, began to frequently ask about her mother's inheritance. When they had married, her father was still running his business, so David was vaguely aware that they were wealthy. Each time she asked him to stop talking about it while she was still mourning, he would fall silent, only to subtly bring up the matter of money after some time. The worst were my in-laws. When they came to my mother's memorial service, my father-in-law said, "Ashley, if you are worried about the inheritance, we can help." Huh? Hey, we've had our fair share of disputes over inheritance when unmarried siblings died. Inheritance can be complicated. If you're troubled, feel free to talk about it. That's right, rely on us too. Yes. Having never shown any inclination to assist them before, she could only give her in-laws a vague response as they put on a knowing facade. And then, about 3 months after her mother's death, David, who had been quiet recently, finally lost his patience. "Hey, have you received your mother's inheritance yet?" A bad feeling swept over her. Quickly, Ashley lied. "The procedures are complicated, so not yet." In reality, she had already completed the procedures, and upon Ed's advice, had deposited the passbook containing the inheritance in a safe deposit box. But it felt right to say that now. Really? But it's been 3 months since your mother passed away, right? Haven't you done the procedures yet? Yeah, so what? Well, never mind. I'm going to bed. For some reason, David headed for the bedroom in high spirits. With a nagging unease in her chest, Ashley prepared for work the next day and then headed for bed. The next day, as Ashley and Julie were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Julie hurried to the door, and when Ashley poked her head out from the kitchen, she saw her in-laws who had dropped by unexpectedly, and David returning from work. Why are my father-in-law and mother-in-law here? It's not a big deal. Julie, go to your room. Julie glanced anxiously at us and headed to her room. What's going on? Never mind that. Ashley, we have something to celebrate today. Ed, her father-in-law, was in high spirits as he opened their fridge and took out a beer. Celebration? You inherited more than $300 million, didn't you? We've already started building a duplex house for us to live together. It even comes with a dreamlike modern kitchen. The one who spoke in the dreamy tone was her mother-in-law. What? What are you talking about? Ashley, be happy. We've decided to build a duplex house. We used half of our savings and the money that Mom and Dad have put aside for the down payment. The loan is under my name, but you can pay it all at once with your inheritance, right? Give back to the two of them. What? I quit my job. I decided to start a business using that inheritance you received. David, her husband, looked somehow satisfied as he said these words. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? I told you, I haven't received the inheritance yet. Didn't I? And what does quitting your job and a duplex house mean? Don't lie. It's clear you've inherited. How about we go on a trip before the house is built? How about Hawaii? Amidst the escalating chaos, David and her mother-in-law were getting excited, agreeing with what Ed said. Then David said, laughing scornfully, You're stingy, Ashley. We've looked into it because you kept saying you hadn't received the inheritance. You can't renounce an inheritance if you don't process it within 3 months. Whether you lied or told the truth about not processing, you still have inherited, right? That is... Considering the scale of my father-in-law's company, there must be more than 300 million, right? We'll be able to live comfortably, thanks to them. Thank you, mother-in-law. Be sure to prepare the money for the duplex house as soon as possible. And my capital, too. Seeing David speak like that made her dizzy. What on earth are these people who want to use my precious inheritance that I received from my mother as they please and indulge in luxury? Although I was filled with intense anger and was about to yell, I couldn't say a word. I was worried about Julie, who was in the other room. I'm going outside for a bit. I called out to the three of them, but they didn't hear me, happily discussing how they'd use the inheritance, and I went out without even taking my wallet. The night wind was cool, and it was then that the tears came. I went to the hilltop park where I used to come with my mother, and I cried, holding back my voice. My anger didn't subside, feeling frustrated, and my heart was worn out from being exploited like that. My emotions were a mess. But she couldn't just say she wanted a divorce. They still had their child, Julie. Her mother's words, "Take care of Julie, above all else," came back to her, and tears spilled again. Suddenly, someone spoke to her. Surprised, she opened her eyes, and the person began to speak softly. 3 days later, she called her husband and in-laws to a restaurant with private rooms. So, you finally came back home after that day. Did you withdraw the money? Ashley, you shouldn't leave home without telling your husband. Exactly. Ignoring the words of the three people, she took out a document. It was a divorce notice, already filled out. David, I want a divorce. What? What are you saying? Her husband looked panicked, and her in-laws looked at each other. I can't go on with you anymore. What are you saying? David's face was turning red as he lashed out at her. You're leaving us after receiving the inheritance? You changed because you got the money. You miser. That's my words. Ashley snapped back. Ever since I inherited my mother's estate, you've been out of control. Quitting jobs to start a business? Deciding to live with in-laws without even asking? Taking out my savings to build a 2-family home? And then planning a trip to Hawaii? Who is the one who changed when the money came in? I can't possibly stay with such people. Wait, you can't just divorce me like that. That's right. Our savings after marriage are shared property. Half of the inheritance belongs to David, no matter what. That's correct. If it comes to that, we will take 300 million with us. David and my in-laws were foaming at the mouth as they approached me. Just as I was about to respond, the door to the private room slid open. Dad!
Grandpa and Grandma should know better. The inheritance Mom received doesn't become shared property. Right, Mr. Ed?
There stood my daughter Julie and Attorney Ed. Julie? And who are you? I'm Attorney Ed. Ashley's mother had entrusted me with this matter, and I've been advising Ashley. As Ed bowed, Dave seemed flustered. That's all well and good, but wait. The inheritance doesn't become shared property? That's correct. Inherited property from a deceased parent does not become shared property, nor is it subject to division of property. What? You've got to be kidding me. Is this a mistake? That can't be. In front of the flustered three, I was taken aback. It seems that they really thought that the inheritance I received would become their property. In that case, it's even more reason not to divorce. I'll cling to you no matter what. My husband with bloodshot eyes shouted out without any regard.
Stop it already!
That was Julie. She continued her calm words.
Since Mom suggested divorce, no. Since Mom inherited the estate, has Dad ever thought about Mom once? Grandpa and Grandma only ever talk about money. They never once mentioned me. I can't consider such people as family.
David and my in-laws were taken aback. The day I was crying about my inheritance, Julie was the one who spoke up. Julie came running after me and she told me,
Dad, Grandpa and Grandma are too much, trying to take Grandma's legacy for themselves. Mom, I'm on your side. Let's fight this together.
With those words, I made up my mind, contacted Ed, and arranged this meeting. Julie, it's not like that. Dad wants you to be happy.
That's right, Julie dear. You'd be happier living with us, wouldn't you?
That's right. A child shouldn't interfere. My desperate husband and still assertive in-laws. Julie, with an exasperated look on her face, said,
I'm going with Mom. I can't bear to be with you anymore.
Julie said this and looked away. Anyway, we've made up our minds. Julie and I will be leaving. As I said this calmly, David got angry. Hey, I've never cheated and you can't force a divorce. I'll hire a lawyer. We'll get that money one way or another. If that's the case, I will take care of it from here. Ed spoke quietly. The issue here is whether there are grave reasons for not continuing the marriage, quitting his job, using the household savings without permission, deciding to live together, and Julie saying she can't bear it. There are various points we can argue. Moreover, your daughter recorded the sound of all of you begging for Ashley's inheritance. That should also serve as evidence. Damn it. David slumped and my in-laws turned pale. After seeing that, Julie and I left the restaurant. A year later, thanks to Ed's efforts, my divorce with David was finalized. Julie and I moved into the house my mother had lived in, but there were several times when we received letters saying, I love you, come back. And David was seen loitering near Julie's school, so we asked Ed to apply for a restraining order. After that, it was quiet. According to the rumors, they actually did build a two-family home. My already retired in-laws had to work in a factory, and although David looked for work, he couldn't find any and is now doing manual labor. I heard from the neighbors that there were constant arguments in the new two-family house. Because of their troublesome fights, they've become disliked by everyone in the neighborhood. Julie and I are still living peacefully, helping each other. A while ago, Julie said, I want to study abroad in the country where Grandma grew up. So, to cut ties completely with my ex-husband, we made up our minds to move overseas. We used a bit of my mother's inheritance, but I'm sure she would be pleased. Now, Julie seems to be enjoying school every day, and I've started working as a teacher there. I hope these peaceful days continue.
My name is Paris. This year, I finally turned 40. Back in my 20s, I met my husband Damon, who was a contractor at my workplace, and we got married. We've had a comfortable life ever since, thanks to my husband's hard work over the years. Let me tell you about the time we struggled the most, right after we got married. I was born as the granddaughter of a landowner in a small town in Washington state. Although my grandfather was a landowner, he's not that impressive. But I did enjoy a fairly comfortable upbringing. As I grew older, I felt like I couldn't become a self-sufficient adult if I kept relying on my family's wealth. So I chose to work for a company in Boston. Determined to be independent, I moved to Boston. I didn't tell my husband that I was a landowner's granddaughter until we decided to get married. The reason was simple. I didn't think it was necessary. I was living off my own salary without relying on my family's money. So when my husband came to visit my family home, he was surprised by its size, but didn't make a big deal about it. I felt reassured that his attitude didn't change after learning about my background, and decided to go ahead with the marriage. Had he changed his behavior, I might have called off the wedding, suspecting he was after my family's money. One day, as we were discussing our upcoming wedding, my grandfather suddenly passed away. Since we were already engaged, my husband and mother-in-law attended the funeral. My mother-in-law suddenly said, "Isn't that Congressman Mr. Douglas?" She was referring to a politician my grandfather had been friendly with. Even though we were small-scale landowners, we had some connections in political and business circles. Impressive you noticed. Excuse me for a moment, I'll go say hello. I walked over to greet Mr. Douglas, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother-in-law was watching me intently, even from a distance. After the mourning period for my grandfather ended, we got married. We were enjoying the sweet atmosphere of newlywed life when something happened. "Paris, are you home?" During the daytime, when my husband wasn't around, the doorbell rang. It was my mother-in-law, and I was caught completely off guard by her sudden visit. Mother-in-law? Just a second! Let me get the door! As I scrambled to open the door, mother-in-law says with a smile, "Sorry for the surprise, just wanted to see how you're doing." I apologize while trying to fix my disheveled hair. "I'm sorry for the way I look." "Mother-in-law, Damon's not here today. He's at work." "That's fine. I actually came to talk to you. Just wanted to make sure Damon's not causing any trouble." Mother-in-law asks various questions, like how my life with her son is going, and if I'm facing any challenges. I'm relieved for a moment, glad that mother-in-law is understanding. But then she sips her coffee, straightens her posture, and says, "By the way, I heard from Damon that your family in Paris owns land?" I didn't expect such a question out of the blue. Still thinking it's just small talk, I answer, No, it's not like that. My grandfather just owns a little land. It's not a big deal." Mother-in-law smiles and asks, "But your family's well off, right?" Something about this makes me uneasy. I manage to keep a smile and play it off. As I suspected, the conversation shifts to awkward topics like my income and whether I'm getting any financial help from my family. From then on, mother-in-law starts visiting our home whenever Damon is not around. She'll look around and always say, "You should ask your parents for help." This happens especially when the house is a bit untidy or after she's taken a peek in the refrigerator. I can tell she's implying, "Why don't you hire a housekeeper?" Or, "You should ask for grocery money." Not wanting to argue, I brush it off each time with a laugh. Then one day, I noticed my card holder was missing. It was a small branded gift from my mom when I got my job. I'm not fond of expensive things, but I remember Mom saying, "Let me do this much for you." And I treasured it, even though it was a bit worn out. I searched everywhere, drawers, bags, but couldn't find it. So casually, I asked mother-in-law, who sometimes helps with cleaning, "Have you seen a yellow card holder?" I thought she might know because she sometimes helps me clean our house. What she says next is completely unexpected. "Oh, that? It was so lovely, I took it." I couldn't believe what was happening. Taking other people's things without asking? Is that acceptable now? I briefly wondered if I'd missed some new custom. But no, that can't be it. Great souvenir. Thanks. Why am I being thanked for something I never gave? I was so shocked I couldn't find the words. That's actually something special my mom gave me, so I can't just give it away. There's a lot I want to say, but I stick to the bare minimum to make my point, not wanting to escalate things. I try hard to calm my racing heart and muster some semblance of respect, because after all, she's my mother-in-law. Oh, really? That's too bad. I really liked it. Fine. Here, it's back. Now give me something else. Wow, I'm stumped. I couldn't believe it. I really wanted that card holder back, so I exchanged it for some organic tomatoes we'd gotten from a neighbor. She seemed unhappy with the tomatoes at first, but once I explained they were organically grown and hard to find in stores, she seemed satisfied. But it got me thinking. All those times she'd come over to help tidy up, she was actually snooping for valuables. She practically knows the contents of our entire house, and it gave me the creeps. I thought she was strange, but I hoped this would be the end of it. I decided to keep this whole ordeal to myself, so I never told my husband. But then, she showed up again, not long after the incident. The nerve of her to come back after all that. Although I reined in my annoyance, remembering she is my mother-in-law after all. Paris, let's go out for lunch today. I know a delicious place. She invited me out, which was unusual, so I had a glimmer of hope that maybe she was going to apologize for last time. But the reality was quite the opposite. As we were leaving the restaurant after an enjoyable lunch, "Oh no, I forgot my wallet! Paris, can you cover for me?" she said. To be honest, given the previous incident, I had a bad feeling about this, but I couldn't just not pay, so I reluctantly covered the whole bill. "Thank you, Paris." Just as I expected, the money never came back. Since then, my mother-in-law often invited me to lunch, conveniently forgetting her wallet each time. I was left with no choice but to pick up the tab. She also never stopped taking things from her home. It got worse every day. "So, what's the gift for today?" she would ask. Out of sheer necessity, I started preparing extra groceries and snacks to give to her. It was better than her taking things without asking, but it still felt awful. The more this went on, the harder it became to talk to my husband about it. I worried how he'd feel if he knew his mother was acting this way. But constantly supplying these gifts started to strain our finances too. It bothered me that our hard-earned money was dwindling. Finally, I found a way to cope. I started working a part-time job, giving me less time to spend with my mother-in-law. And it worked. I had significantly fewer encounters with her. Maybe I should have done this from the start. Now I only had to deal with her during summer vacations and Christmas visits, which made life much easier. But when we visited her for the summer vacation after a long time, her bad habits re-emerged. She'd only make comments like, "How have you been with your family lately?" Or, "That's a nice watch you're wearing," when my husband was away. Though I had some financial flexibility because of my part-time job, my watch was nothing special. As for my relationship with my family, it was the same as always. She had one reason for asking these questions. I realized from my long experience with her. She was fishing to see if she could get something more. "Hey, sister-in-law, long time no see. Got any gifts?" Just when I was getting fed up with my mother-in-law, up popped my jobless, live-at-home sister-in-law, Madeline. "I've brought some snacks. Feel free to have some," I said with a smile. That's when my sister-in-law said something outrageous. "No, not like that. Your family is rich, right? Don't you have something better, like a designer bag?" She wanted a designer bag as a casual gift? I was speechless, just like when my mother-in-law had made her ridiculous demands. "I'm sorry for not being more thoughtful," I said, brushing it off. I have so much I want to say, but I don't want to stir up trouble during a short 2-night visit. "Seriously? Make sure you bring gifts next time." My sister-in-law retreated to her room, laughing as if she were in the right. She's only a few years younger than me, and her outrageous comments and actions are infuriating. But I keep my cool, reminding myself that I married into this family. Yet, the lack of gifts seemed to have hardened my sister-in-law and mother-in-law against me. I realized this while helping with household chores. "You're washing those dishes wrong. You're using too much soap and wasting water," griped my mother-in-law. Confused, I was taken aback. I wash dishes like anyone else, and it's the same way I do it at the restaurant, where I work part-time. If anything, I think I'm more careful here. "Well, you're from a well-off family, so I guess you're not used to household chores," she chuckled. Here I am, washing a mountain of dirty dishes she'd left, and she's saying I don't do housework? The audacity. I wanted to voice my displeasure, but I held it in. "Well, it's done now. Just pay for the soap and water later," she said. With that, she left all the chores to me and went off to watch TV. My sister-in-law was no better, demanding an allowance from me. I have no obligation to give money to an adult woman who's only 3 years younger than me. I tried to laugh it off, but she was persistent. She even opened the bathroom door while I was showering to say, "I'm waiting for my allowance." Even between women, this is unacceptable. Finally, I lost my patience and snapped. "I can't do that." Perhaps because she's younger, I loosened my self-control. "What? How arrogant. I'll tell Mom," she retorted, and she really did report me to our mother-in-law. Under normal circumstances, a parent would scold or be dumbfounded by such behavior, but not the woman in this family. "How could you, Paris? Don't you find Madeline adorable?" I was reprimanded. Adorable? No way. But I knew they would keep blaming me until they got money. I'll be going home tomorrow. With that thought, I ended up giving in and handed my sister-in-law some money. And so it was decided that we'd visit my in-laws again for Christmas. At that time, we had just returned from a trip to Italy for our wedding anniversary, so I thought no one would say anything more. I heard mother-in-law and father-in-law will be celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary next year, so I bought them a pair of Venetian glasses, each costing around $300 as a gift. I've had my ups and downs with mother-in-law, but I felt I could put my heart into choosing these. For my sister-in-law, I picked out a leather bag from a popular, though not famous, Italian brand. It was a little bitter meeting their demands, but our rare trip had been enjoyable, so it didn't bother me too much. In fact, during the trip, I confided everything about mother-in-law and my sister-in-law to my husband. It felt wrong to bring it up during a fun moment, but the freeing atmosphere of our trip made me spill the beans. My husband held me and said, "I'm sorry. I'm glad you talked to me. Let me know right away if something happens again." He's truly a wonderful man. I'm glad I married him. I felt so clear-headed. But my warm feelings were about to be shattered. Crash! A loud noise rang out, and startled, I rushed to the kitchen. The Venetian glasses I gifted were in pieces. "Oh, Paris! I'm so sorry! My hand slipped!" Mother-in-law was laughing as she said this. Could someone's hand really slip and break both glasses? It's a lie. She did it on purpose. I couldn't help but glare at mother-in-law. For a moment, mother-in-law hesitated, but then laughed it off. "They break so easily." "Wow, what happened? Did it break?" My sister-in-law was drawn in by the noise. "Yes, it did. It was just an accident." This is not how someone who breaks a gift within hours should act. I couldn't believe the nerve of these two, laughing non-stop in this situation. Memories of past grievances flooded back. I'd carefully chosen these gifts, thinking of mother-in-law and father-in-law. I stared at the broken glasses, my heart sinking, when my sister-in-law looked at me. "Well, if it's such a cheap thing that breaks easily, you shouldn't have bothered. If you're wealthy, bring something high-end, at least." My stepsister nodded in agreement with my mother-in-law's words. "I don't need such pathetic souvenirs." "Oh, wait a minute." Rushing back to her room, my stepsister returned with the bag I had gifted her. I was actually running out of toys for Charlie, she said, laughing as she let Charlie, the family dog, in the yard chew on the bag. In no time, the bag was in tatters, ruined by teeth and dirt. It felt like my fond memories of Italy were torn to shreds, and tears almost filled my eyes. I won't forgive this. Fine, I'm leaving. I won't be coming back anymore, I said. Both my mother-in-law and stepsister responded with a puzzled, huh? Their mouths were still smiling, so I guess they didn't get it. No worries, let me make it clear for them. Did you hear that? I spoke into my mobile phone. Yes, I heard it all. I'm on my way. Upon hearing my husband's voice, I ended the video call. In reality, he had left me alone on purpose to gather evidence of their mistreatment. I had been updating him via WhatsApp, and upon hearing a noise, he had instructed me to start a video call. The only reason I didn't break into tears was that I had a strong ally on my side. My husband arrived and immediately asked, "What's going on here?" "My glass from Paris just accidentally broke," my mother-in-law responded. Stepsister also tried to chime in. "Charlie just decided to..." But my husband wasn't having any of it. "Don't mess around. I saw everything. What are you doing to Paris?" At that moment, the words, "doing to Paris," caught my attention, as if something had been done to him too. "Well, you don't give us much money, do you? Paris is your wife. It's okay, right? It's her duty," my mother-in-law retorted. I was stunned. Could it be that they were mooching off my husband as well? "Mom and your bunch have always been messed up. Stop leeching money off your kids." With my husband's words, suspicion turned into certainty. Turns out, he'd been asked for money by his family for a long time too. Before we got married, they even created debts under his name, which he ended up paying off. After marriage, the money grubbing continued. It seems he just didn't lend them anymore. I was truly shocked to find this out, but maybe he felt it wasn't necessary to tell me, just like I hadn't told him I was the grandchild of a landowner. He probably thought it was a problem only he had to deal with. Never could he have imagined that they'd target his wife. But since my parents were landowners, they now targeted me. How far will these people go to squeeze money out of others? It's disgusting. Even if they're my husband's family, they're awful. That's it! If you're going to go after Paris too, then it's a different story. My husband raised his voice. From now on, I'm cutting ties with this family. I'll sell off everything I bought, from cars to household items. You better find a new TV and fridge, quick. At this moment, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were visibly stunned. And for good reason. The only people living in this house are my retired father-in-law on pension, my homemaker mother-in-law, and my unemployed sister-in-law. This household doesn't have the means to recover the household items if they're sold. My husband and I, who work hard outside and earn our own money, must have been seen as reliable support. "Let's go," said my husband, pulling my hand. We left the kitchen. But from behind, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law chased after us. "Wait! Please, don't abandon us! We won't ask Paris for gifts anymore!" At these words, my husband stopped. "Stop making basic decency sound like a favor. It's messed up to demand money and gifts in the first place." At my husband's cold response, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law looked disheartened. Do they not understand common sense? It's almost pitiable. My husband threw them a small lifeline. "If you can write up a contract, we can reconsider." Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said, "A contract?" looking puzzled. The agreement was straightforward, meant for someone committed to working hard. No contact or communication with me when my husband isn't around, and to pay back all the money they've borrowed so far. However, mother-in-law and my sister-in-law immediately started fighting over who would get a job to meet these terms. They didn't want their stuff sold, but neither did they want to work. Seeing this, my husband whispered to me, "Let's cut them off once they've paid us back." I never said I was reconsidering cutting ties with them. I couldn't help but laugh. I completely agreed. I didn't want to be associated with these people who had nothing better to do than rely on others. After that, we never visited my husband's family home again. Over 10 years have passed. The financial state of my husband's family has been in shambles, struggling to pay rent, daily expenses, and other debt. Mother-in-law and my sister-in-law are working, sort of. But with no qualifications or solid work experience, they're stuck in low-paying jobs or in poor work environments. Given their selfish attitudes, it's no surprise they can't hold on to a job. Despite that, they don't want to give up their lavish lifestyles, so their debt keeps piling up. They keep reaching out to my husband, begging for help, but he's firmly rejected them, effectively cutting off ties. As for my husband, his diligent work has paid off, and he's climbed the corporate ladder quite impressively. I've quit my part-time job and returned to being a stay-at-home mom. We've had a child, and my husband has created an environment where I can focus solely on raising our kid. Now my life is as peaceful and fulfilling as when I lived with my parents, if not more so. I'm grateful for having such a wonderful husband. Your parents' achievements don't define you. Similarly, if your parents are terrible, it doesn't mean you'll turn out the same way. What matters most is your own character, no matter the circumstances you were raised in. I intend to keep growing, to always be that better version of myself.
I want a divorce. What? On the day I turned 40, my husband suddenly brought up the subject of divorce. Apparently, he no longer sees me as a woman. To bring up divorce on our anniversary of all days, I cried at the cruel reality. But this divorce turmoil would steer things in an unexpected direction. My name is Rachel. I've been married to my husband Luke for 5 years, and he's 10 years younger than me. We met when I was 35. I was pursued intensely by Luke, who was only 25 at the time. I did have feelings for him, but I was also nervous about starting a relationship. That nervousness was about our age difference. Being 10 years older than him, I could never fully gain confidence in myself. I felt older compared to his friends and feared that he might get tired of our age difference someday. With those thoughts, I couldn't muster the courage to start dating him. As if he saw through my insecurities, he always had kind words for me. "I truly want to marry you, Rachel. Would you consider it?" "I'm flattered, but I'm 10 years older than you, Luke. I might not be able to have children." "Even so, I want to be with you, Rachel. Even if we can't have children, as long as you're by my side, that's all that matters to me." "But I'll age faster than you, you know? I'll get wrinkles and age spots much sooner. I might even become unable to walk." "I don't care about any of that. No matter how old you get, I'll love you forever." With those words, he held me close. In that moment, I could feel the anxieties within me evaporate. Instead of using my lack of confidence as an excuse, I decided to trust him. That's when I accepted his proposal, and we became officially married. We essentially had a whirlwind marriage, but I never regretted it. From then on, it was a daily effort. Although I was definitely older than when we first met, I kept my figure by jogging daily and paid special attention to my skincare. All of this was for my husband. I did it so that he, being younger, would never feel embarrassed to be with me. With that sole intention, I've been putting in my efforts. Time flew, and today is our 5th wedding anniversary. It also happens to be my 40th birthday. When I came home from work with the cake, my husband was already there. "I'm home. I brought cake." "Hey, can you sit down? I have something to talk about." "Huh? What?" "Something to talk about? Are we going on a trip or something?" But Luke's expression seems gloomy. Feeling a bit anxious, I sat down in front of him as he asked, "What's this about?" I asked, and my husband quietly opened his mouth. "I want a divorce." "What?" I couldn't believe my own ears. "Divorce? This must be a joke, right?" Today is our 5th wedding anniversary. Divorce? Such a thing. I continued to question his unbelievable statement in my mind. Then, with trembling fear, I finally spoke. Are you joking about divorce? Because if this is a joke, I'm not laughing. Do you think I would joke about something like this? Luke replied, a grim look on his face. I can't handle being married to you anymore, Rachel. So I want a divorce. But why? We've never had a big fight. Why suddenly divorce? I found someone else I like. What do you mean? Are you saying you're cheating on me? Cheating? No, I'm serious. She's the only one I love right now. I can't believe this. How could you do something so cruel? As I confronted him through my tears, Luke casually said, because of your age. Because of my age? What kind of reason is that? It's a reasonable one, isn't it? You're 40 now. No different from any other old lady. What? That's cruel. How can you say something like that so easily? Huh? Just so you know, the reason I cheated is because of you. Because of me? What did I do? With a deep sigh, Luke delivered the unreasonable reason for divorce. Listen, put yourself in my shoes for a second. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to be seen with an old, increasingly ugly woman? Ugly? I've been working hard every day so that you wouldn't feel embarrassed, Luke. Hard work? Ha! Luke scoffed. Ridiculous. Do you really think a near-menopausal hag working hard will make a difference? And do you think there's a man who wants to be with a woman whose charm has worn off? The moment a woman loses her youth, it's game over, idiot. I can't believe. The reason I had to cheat is because of you, aging and becoming ugly. It's not my fault at all. If you're going to hold a grudge, hold it against yourself. After that, Luke continued to berate me as if justifying his own infidelity. I can't wait to be with her. Accept the divorce already, and let me make it clear. There's no way I'll ever love you again. Don't think you can stay as my wife forever with your ugliness. If you insist, why not go get some anti-aging plastic surgery? He kept blaming me for his infidelity, incessantly insisting that it was my fault for growing old and becoming ugly. Because of our age difference, because I was aging, he hurled every insult imaginable at me, and my spirit dwindled day by day. Looking visibly emaciated and my mind spiraling, my younger husband sneered. In a normal case, I should be suing my husband and his mistress for emotional distress, but I just don't have the strength for that now. As a result of the constant manipulation by my husband, I didn't even claim any compensation before finally accepting a divorce from him. Some might think I should have confided in someone, but who could say we were divorced because I was ugly? I was so crushed by my feelings of inferiority. In the end, I told my family and friends that we divorced because we couldn't have children. Ever since, I stopped going to work and shut myself in at my parents' house. I didn't go out, and I only spoke to my parents minimally. Having lost confidence in myself, I wanted to cut off any connection with the outside world. Seeing me like this, my mother took me to a well-known psychiatrist. When my name was called and I entered the room, the doctor looked at me wide-eyed. Huh? Is it really Rachel? Rachel Smith, right? Huh? Do you remember me? We were in the same class in junior high. It's me, Taylor. What? No way. That, Taylor? The man standing there was Taylor Miller, my classmate from junior high. He was never the type to stand out, but even back then, he was excellent, and his calmness and sincerity gave him a somewhat mature air. Taylor, you've become a doctor. I'm so surprised. No, I'm the one who's surprised. I never thought I'd run into you here, Rachel. You're as beautiful as ever. What? His casual comment made me blush instantly. Feeling embarrassed at flattering myself with his compliment, I quickly denied it. Stop with the flattery. My husband called me old and ugly before he left me. So that's what happened. Is that why you're here today? Well, that is... It's okay. I'll listen to everything. Can you talk to me about it? Looking at his gentle smile, tears well up in my eyes. I nodded silently and slowly began to recount what had happened. My husband called me ugly and left me, even though he promised he'd love me forever. I see. That must have been tough. Yeah, it was tough. I felt like my whole self had been denied. Each time I opened my mouth, tears spilled out, and I couldn't speak properly. Still, he listened to my story to the end. As a doctor, thank you for talking to me. You really did your best, Rachel. I could finally share these painful feelings with someone. Feeling relieved, all the emotions I had been holding back came pouring out at once. Since the divorce, I cried out loud for the first time. I had always wanted to confide in someone like this. I wanted help, and he was the one who saved me. In the end, he looked straight at me and said, "It's okay. You're beautiful, Rachel. You were back then, and you are now. So I want you to have more confidence in yourself." Taylor, I could feel the negative emotions that had frozen in my chest slowly melting away with his words. I felt the weight I had been carrying lighten considerably. 2 years later, as I was walking in the town, I noticed a figure approaching me. When I looked up, it was my ex-husband. "Rachel, long time no see." Yes, it's been a while." We exchanged formal greetings, and just as I was about to say, "Well then," and leave, he grabbed my arm tightly. He noticed the ring on my ring finger and made a mock surprised face. "Whoa, that's scary. That ring? It's way too much." "Ring? What's so scary about it?" "No way. The one on your ring finger. It's the wedding ring I gave you, isn't it?" "Huh? Do you still have feelings for me or something, since you're still wearing it?" "I'm shocked. It's a good thing I divorced an old lady like you." "Huh." In that moment, my fading resentment towards him resurged. I sternly spoke to my ex-husband, who was getting all excited on his own. "What are you misunderstanding? This isn't the ring you gave me." "What?" "This is a ring I received from my current husband. I threw away the ring you gave me a long time ago." You threw it away? And what do you mean by current husband? Don't tell me." "Yes, I remarried." You remarried? An old lady like you?" "Yes, I had remarried. As you might guess, it's to Taylor. Since the day I visited his clinic, we started seeing each other. We went out to eat together, went to various places, and he proposed to me with marriage in mind. I had just had a wedding ceremony the other day, and I was finally able to find true happiness. Whether he didn't like that fact or not, my ex-husband started hurling insults at me again like he used to. You remarried? That's a lie. You're already 42, right? There's no way an old hag like you could remarry. Think what you want. My current husband is not like you. He's a wonderful person who doesn't look down on people." "Ha! I bet he's just some bum, right? He probably couldn't get married and was struggling, so he targeted an old hag like you." To him, who was mercilessly laughing, I told the truth. He's not a bum. He's a doctor with his own practice. A doctor with his own practice? Do you understand? He's a doctor. A doctor? You remarried a doctor? He probably couldn't stand the fact that I had remarried someone better than him. Trembling, my ex-husband was shouting, "It's a lie. It's impossible." I was completely done with him, who could only despise and not acknowledge other people's happiness. I want to say thank you. Thank you for divorcing me. What do you mean? I really am grateful. Thanks to you dumping me, I was able to marry my current husband. I was able to break up with a terrible man like you and get the best life with a superior husband. I can't thank you enough. You! My ex-husband was about to attack me with an intense momentum. I stared at him sharply and continued speaking. "I'm really glad I got to meet you here today. I've always wanted to see you." "Huh? Me?" Misunderstanding something, Luke quickly changed his attitude and flashed a full-faced smile. "You wanted to see me. Do you still like me? You can't forget about me, even with your husband around, can you?" "Well, I can't forget. In fact, I've been thinking of coming to see you myself, just as I thought. You know, I've been reconsidering my preferences too. I'd rather have a mature woman like Rachel than a younger one. If you insist, I might even consider getting back together." As he said this, he reached out to touch my shoulder. I quickly brushed off his hand and replied with a stern voice, "Get back together? You must be joking. That's the last thing I want. But you said you wanted to see me." "Yes, I wanted to see you, but not to get back together. To demand alimony." Alimony? Yes, I was too emotionally distressed at the time to think about it, but looking back, infidelity is unforgivable, isn't it? We still have a few months left to claim alimony, so I will. Luke's face quickly turned pale, and cold sweat streamed down his cheeks. "Wait a minute. I'm your ex-husband, and now you're doing this to me? After all this time? That's awful." "Huh? What's wrong with exercising my rights?" "You're the one who cheated, right? You can't just have all the goods for yourself. Do you know how much you hurt me? Calm down. I realize now that I should have chosen you. Huh? I didn't ask for your opinion. I don't care what a piece of trash like you thinks. I'm warning you. I won't let you be happy. I'll make sure you pay the alimony, even if I have to drag you through hell. What? Seeing his ex-wife again, Luke's future took an unexpected turn. As he sank to the ground, I said, "Goodbye. I'll contact you later." Wait! Rachel! Wait! Don't ever call my name again. And never show up in front of me again. This can't be. Ignoring Luke, who was slumped over, I left the scene. I haven't seen him since. After that, I hired a lawyer my husband introduced me to and claimed alimony from Luke and his mistress. After divorcing me, Luke was dumped by his mistress and lost his job. He's currently living hand to mouth, working part-time in construction. Naturally, he can't afford to pay the alimony in one lump sum. After discussing it with my lawyer, we decided to deduct a fixed amount from his monthly wages. His already precarious living situation will probably become even more difficult due to the alimony deductions. Luke begged the lawyer to get back together and at least reduce the alimony, but I ignored him and continued to demand the full amount. He's the kind of person who used to look down on and insult others for fun. He deserves this kind of retribution. I'm determined to push him until he finishes paying, by any means necessary. On the other hand, I'm living happily with my current husband. We're the same age, so there's no belittling each other, and I don't feel inferior. Rachel, you look beautiful today. Stop it. But thank you. No, it's the truth. I can't thank my husband enough for saving me. From now on, I'll live confidently for him.
I've kept him in this house for 10 years. He's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law openly hostile, believing my husband's lies. My husband himself has changed from the man I once loved into a selfish monster. Is this his true nature? At this point, I don't even care. Enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck dealing with your bad attitude. My name is Clara, a 37-year-old working at a local bakery. I've been with my husband Albert since high school. His family has a long line of carpenters, and he joined the family business right after graduating. We got married at 24, and we're just an ordinary, happy couple. That all changed when we were 27.
Clara, the hospital just called. Please come quickly.
A frantic call from my usually composed mother-in-law at work. I rushed to the hospital and found my husband staring blankly ahead. He looked defeated, and my mother-in-law sobbing beside him. Clara, I can't move my legs anymore. At that moment, he broke down crying. I realized our lives would never be the same. Apparently, my husband went to the grocery store to buy drinks during his lunch break. My husband was waiting at a traffic light when a car hit him. His spine was damaged, paralyzing him from the waist down. After a long hospital stay, my husband came home, a completely different person compared to before the accident. We were living in a rental apartment, but then my usually quiet and craftsman-like father-in-law said, "You should live with us." And before my husband returned, he made his home accessible for us. We were financially unstable, so we gratefully accepted. "I'm home." He entered the house in a wheelchair, his voice devoid of energy. He used to be cheerful, loud, and always cracking jokes. Now, he was like a stranger. "Clara, is Travis doing well?"
"Daddy, does he hurt?"
Our 2-year-old son, Travis, was worried. Travis loves spending time with his dad, especially going down the slide at the park. Whenever his dad has a day off, they head to the park and slide until Travis gets tired. Seeing his dad after a long time, Travis couldn't contain his excitement. He tugged at his dad's hand as if to say, "Let's go play over there." But his dad looked sad. Before the accident, he would have easily stood up, put Travis on his shoulders, and spun around. Now he can't do that for Travis ever again. His dad is still recovering both physically and emotionally. Just then, mother-in-law shouted, "Travis, your dad can't walk anymore. Go away." My mother-in-law suddenly yelled at Travis. Travis, only 2 years old, couldn't understand and burst into tears. Mother-in-law looked annoyed. Mother-in-law is noisy about such a son. I was looking at him with a face that said something like that. Mother-in-law has been more irritable. She's probably struggling to accept the situation. "Travis, big boys don't cry. Come on, let's play with Grandpa." Father-in-law said, lifting Travis up. Travis smiled instantly. Father-in-law is usually quiet around us, but he adores his grandson Travis. For a moment, I saw a smile on father-in-law's face. During my husband's hospital stay, I was summoned by my in-laws. So, Clara, what are you planning to do? You're not thinking of leaving Albert, are you? Mother-in-law asked, a bit agitated. Father-in-law signaled her to stop. I wondered, do they think that I'm heartless? Their words stung a little. My feelings for my husband haven't changed, and Travis loves his dad too. We'll get through this as a family. Thank you for your concern. I plan to stay by my husband, I assured them. They seemed grateful. I've read many books to prepare myself, but I've come to realize that good intentions alone aren't enough. Since coming home, my husband has become quite demanding. That's not it. Come on, get it right. He'd snap, increasingly frustrated. He even threw a book at me once. You don't understand how I feel. A phrase I've heard too many times. Seeing his changed behavior, Travis started saying,
Daddy is scary.
My son started saying things like that. However, in front of the helpers and friends who come to visit him, he is a bright husband like before. Well, I guess I'll just take it easy from now on, he'd joke, and I felt a sense of nostalgia. Hey, Clara, come here. When my husband calls me in that urgent tone, it's usually about his bathroom needs. I was busy feeding Travis and couldn't leave. I'm sorry, mother-in-law, I can't step away right now. Could you please help Albert? Even if I say something like that, it'll be awkward for him if I go, right? I'll take over making dinner for Travis. That's what she said, but my mother-in-law hardly took care of my husband. She seemed to chat with him while I was at work, but that was about it. Seeing this, my father-in-law sighed. I'll go. Clara, sorry for always troubling you. He's gruff, but father-in-law is kind. He's also very proactive about helping my husband. When my husband first came home, he'd ask me, What are you doing right now? What book is that? He even helped me study. My mother-in-law didn't like that. Clara, why don't you quit your job? Albert is in such a condition you should support him properly. That's what she said. I knew what mother-in-law was getting at. Basically, when father-in-law and I are at work, stay-at-home mother-in-law has to take care of my husband, and she doesn't like it. Even though we mostly have a caregiver for that now. He's her own son. What's her deal? Plus, Travis is going to grow up. My husband can't work properly anymore, but we still need money. So, mother-in-law, could you please help out more? Father-in-law is helping me study, you know? We're family. Mother-in-law sighed at me. Don't you dare make a move on my husband. She glared at me. What? Is she insane? My husband is still selfish, and mother-in-law says ridiculous things. I've thought about taking Travis and leaving many times. But my parents are taking care of my elderly grandmother at home. I couldn't think of going back there, and I didn't have the courage to live alone with my son. Clara, you've aged. Time flies, and it's been 10 years since my husband had his accident. I'm still working at the bakery. I'm now 37, and Travis is in 6th grade. These past 10 years, my mind has been filled with concerns for my husband and child. No wonder I've aged. Hey, how rude. We're still in our 30s, you know. Sorry. Maybe my husband has come to accept his condition after 10 years. He's started talking to me cheerfully again. While I'm at work, father-in-law, who's now retired, looks after him. As for mother-in-law, she's uncooperative as ever. And lately, for some reason, she's started ignoring me. But I can't think of why she'd treat me like this. Recently, my husband found a new hobby. He started playing basketball at a nearby gym with people in similar situations about 3 times a month. It seems to be a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful to the friend who introduced him to it. Travis, you want to come too? Basketball is fun. When I tried to talk to our son Travis, he brushed me off saying, I'm more into baseball, you know. Our relationship had grown distant. Travis, who once adored his dad, now saw him mostly as an angry figure. My husband didn't think he was the problem. Isn't he a bit young to be in his rebellious phase? He'd joke, leaving me with no choice but to sigh. Out of the blue, I got a call from my mom back home. Hello, Mom, it's been a while. What? My elderly grandmother had passed away. She had been suffering from dementia and had been in a care facility for years. She caught a cold, which turned into pneumonia. I was told she looked peaceful when she passed, surrounded by family. That gave me some comfort. Only Travis and I attended the funeral. My parents live in the next town over, a good drive away. My husband stayed with his parents, so Travis and I took the opportunity to visit my family home. Seeing my parents again, they had aged significantly. Well, I guess I've aged too, I thought.
How's Albert doing? Are you getting along with his parents?
My mom asked, looking concerned. I felt like crying just looking at her. Meanwhile, Travis was happily playing video games with his cousins. I hadn't seen him smile like that in a long time. Well, his dad's fine, his mom not so much, I said, forcing a smile. My parents reassured me.
You can always come back home.
Knowing I had a place to return to made me feel stronger. Coming back from a quick grocery run, I find my son standing in front of my husband's room. What are you up to? I'm about to ask, but he puts his finger to his lips, signaling me to be quiet. Inside, I hear my mother-in-law's angry voice and my husband trying to calm her down. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but I can't help but listen, and what I hear is shocking.
Hey, Clara, when are you getting back home? Get back here now.
A few days later, my husband calls, clearly frustrated that my son and I haven't returned. After overhearing that conversation between my husband and his mom, we left his parents' house immediately. We went straight back to my parents' house. When I told them what happened, they welcomed us with open arms, though visibly concerned. I'm not going back there. I'm a burden, right? I'll give you the divorce you want. My husband snaps.
What are you talking about? Just come back. We need to talk.
He hangs up abruptly. My parents, who were listening nearby, look worried. My dad stands up and says, "Let's go." We leave my son Travis with relatives and head back to my in-laws' house. Travis, sensing the tension, tells me, "Mom, don't back down." I'm touched by his courage. They better be ready for me. We're back. Hearing this, my irate mother-in-law storms out to greet us. What's the meaning of this? Oh, Clara's parents. What brings you here today? I sense her irritation despite her polite tone. We're here to discuss Clara and Albert's divorce, my dad says, visibly angry. In the living room, my husband is sitting in a wheelchair, clearly surprised by my parents' sudden appearance. He glares at me as if to say, "How dare you bring your parents?" He always does this when he's unhappy, just glares at me. His mom does the same. Lately, he's been staring at me like he's watching me, wondering what he doesn't like. They're like two peas in a pod.
Do you always glare at Clara like that?
My mom asks, also angry. In this tense atmosphere, only my father-in-law remains calm. A few days ago, the police came to our house. They said we were mistreating our daughter-in-law. They left after a brief talk. Do you know anything about this, Clara? Yes, I was the one who called the police, I reply calmly. Upon hearing this, my husband and mother-in-law explode in anger. See, it's all her fault. She's crazy. You should divorce her. If anyone's crazy, it's you two. My husband is nodding in agreement next to me. But father-in-law is different. Clara, there must be a reason. Speak up. He says this in a gentle voice. A few days ago, I came back here. Albert and the others didn't seem to notice, but what I heard was so horrifying. I realized I can't live with them anymore. Father-in-law wasn't home at the time. He looked puzzled, but these two are different. Their faces have turned pale. Do they recognize themselves? What are you talking about? Are you okay? My husband looked at me with a smug face, probably thinking I have no evidence. But my son Travis was quite vigilant. Do you want to see a video? Travis recorded this. I play a video. In it, my husband claims that I've been having an affair for years. After that, I'm plotting to take over the house. He says he's told me multiple times he wants a divorce so he can remarry someone he met through basketball. Mother-in-law is furious after hearing this. Divorce her immediately. She's even flirting with your father. I won't forgive her this time. But mother-in-law wants to keep Travis as the heir. The balcony on the second floor. The floor is old, about to give way. Can't we use that to get rid of Clara? Mother-in-law grins as she says this. That's going too far. But if she gets injured, maybe she'll understand how I feel. That's what they said. The video ends and I quietly put away my phone. Of course, I've never had an affair, and this is the first I've heard that my husband has met someone through basketball. I felt my life was in danger, so I reported to the police. That's all there is to it. But the police only said they'd listen to my story. My husband and mother-in-law are silent, their faces pale. Father-in-law looks angrier than ever. What is this? Are you both idiots? I thought I was the fool. Thank you, father-in-law, for always being there. I genuinely felt that way. Despite all this, mother-in-law starts talking nonsense about how parents should let their children be with the ones they truly love. Realizing that staying here would be pointless, my son and I start to pack up to leave. Can you believe her? After letting her stay in our home for 10 years, she's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law glared at me as she usually did and said that. In response, my dad said, I've heard a lot about you from my daughter, but this is the first time I've talked to someone and been so uncomfortable. In response, my dad calmly said, my mother-in-law kept muttering, but wouldn't stop bad-mouthing me. Fed up, I finally snapped, enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck with your miserable life, you nasty woman. I left their house with my parents. After that, my husband and I got divorced. Some people who didn't know the full story called me a heartless wife, but I told the truth to my close friends. Word seemed to spread among my ex-husband's friends, and now hardly anyone visits him. I don't know if that's the reason, but after a while, my ex-husband and his mother started reaching out. I never picked up the phone. When they realized I wasn't answering, they started sending a barrage of messages, all strangely pleading for reconciliation. Funny enough, all the messages were about wanting to get back together. Didn't he say he found someone better? Reading his words like, I took you for granted. Now that you're gone, I realize your worth. I thought, realizing it now? Too little, too late. I told my ex-husband, if you keep contacting me unnecessarily, I'll go to the police. And after that, the messages stopped cold. I moved back to my parents' home in the next town over and opened a bakery in a nearby vacant shop. The only employees are me and my parents. My son Travis helps out with cleaning the shop now and then. Travis started middle school this spring and seems to have made a lot of new friends. He's also fully committed to his baseball club activities. Though the bakery was just a hobby at first, thankfully it's gaining a good reputation and we're getting more new customers lately. Welcome. Oh, it's you, father-in-law. My former father-in-law visits the shop a few times a month to buy bread. From what I heard, his son's feelings were one-sided. He was so persistent that he even got banned from playing basketball, which he used to enjoy. Honestly, serves him right. My former father-in-law had said he'd take care of his son. I don't care about you. Do as you please. But he coldly told my former mother-in-law. That seemed to have shaken her, and now she's actively taking care of her son, which made me chuckle. There are some financial worries, but with my parents' support, we're managing. I'm home. Oh, Grandpa's here. Play catch with me. You've grown again, haven't you, Travis? Your grandpa used to be the ace of his middle school baseball team. Bring it on. Watching their heartwarming conversation, I strongly vowed to make the most of my new life together with my precious family.
Apologize to Brian and Marlene and bow your head to the floor. At my birthday party, my husband Corey yelled at me and shoved my shoulder, trying to make me sit on the floor. Marlene, my daughter-in-law, looked up as if searching for something, her face downcast. From my angle, I could see a malicious smile forming on her lips, which otherwise appeared as though she was about to cry. Would you say the same if you saw this? I presented something I had prepared in front of Corey's eyes. The time had come to reveal everything after being continuously mocked. My name is Sienna, and I turned 73 this year. Corey had stayed on as an advisor at his company even after retirement, but finally stepped down last year to enjoy his retirement. We've led a quiet, if ordinary, married life since we wed, without even arguing much. Our eldest son, Brian, got married a few years back and moved out. With our parenting duties complete and no other worries, life was good, though we're not exactly swimming in money. We've saved up a decent amount for our retirement. Living together with just Corey, there's really nothing we lack. We expected this peaceful life to continue. The change in our lives came with our eldest son and his wife moving in. Initially, they lived in a rental apartment, but they recently expressed a desire to live with us. True, Brian's workplace is closer to our home. Marlene is a housewife, so she doesn't have to worry about commuting. At first, Brian was the one who talked to me about it. Marlene has generally kept her distance from our home. It's not that we have a bad relationship, but something always felt off. Corey tells me I'm overthinking, but I can't help but feel it's women's intuition. However, this wasn't the first time the topic of living together came up. They had initially refused the idea when they first got married. Maybe back then they wanted to live independently. Now they've been married for a few years, and I have a feeling there's more to this decision to move in. I'm not particularly enthusiastic, but Corey feels differently. He's always enjoyed a bustling home and seemed a bit lonely since the kids moved out. He thinks that once our grandchildren are born, things will get even livelier. If Corey agrees, then I can't be the only one to oppose it. They decided to move in during the month when their apartment lease was up for renewal. With plans already this far along, Marlene has yet to pay us a visit. We're going to be living under the same roof, so it seems courteous to at least say hello. Marlene's ongoing absence makes me wonder if she's actually against moving in. In the end, Marlene showed up on moving day. She arrived with the movers. "Let's get along from now on, okay?" And when I smiled and said that, Marlene replied softly, "Nice to meet you." She wouldn't look me in the eyes. I swear, there was no harassment from my side. No mother-in-law and daughter-in-law drama or anything like that. But still, her attitude. Even for someone as patient as me, it was irritating. Corey didn't seem to mind much and started showing the newlyweds to their room. We had made some repairs and adjustments to the room they'd be staying in, considering it would now be a shared living space. The room had been renovated to their specifications. "Huh? Is it really this small?" While straightening their shoes in the entryway, I heard Marlene's annoyed voice coming from deep within the house. "Do you really intend to cram us into this tiny room? I can't breathe in here." Marlene raised her voice as if she were the victim. I quickly made my way into the house. Corey looked perplexed, scratching his head in front of a red-faced Marlene complaining about the small room. "Small? This is one of the larger rooms in this house. It's even renovated exactly as you asked. What more do you want?" I couldn't help but let my annoyance seep into my voice since Corey was taking heat. That's when Marlene finally looked at me. For the first time since we greeted each other, she locked eyes with me. "So you're Sienna? You plan to shove us into this storage closet?" I was taken aback by her harsh words. It was absurd. Brian also tugged at her sleeve, saying, "Hey." But Marlene was unstoppable. She started talking about how her family's home had rooms far more spacious than this, just for storage. She stressed how the stress came from the difference in lifestyle and standards between her family and ours. She even started talking about how rich her family was and how poor we were in comparison. I never thought Marlene could have so many complaints. I thought even the tolerant Corey would get mad at this point, but he was just calmly trying to soothe Marlene. From Brian's attitude, I could tell this was a usual occurrence for them. Marlene kept complaining for about 15 minutes, but finally seemed to realize that nothing would change by doing so. She entered her room and slammed the door shut. Corey and I exchanged glances inside. So began our tumultuous life with the newlyweds. I had hoped that Marlene would eventually get used to this home. After all, as a housewife who wasn't working, she'd be spending most of her time here. I can't deny that I had some ulterior motives for starting this joint living arrangement. As I've gotten older, household chores requiring physical strength have become more challenging. Though I wish Marlene would lend a hand, she stays cooped up in her room all day and doesn't help out at all. I handle the laundry, putting it in a hamper in the laundry room and then hanging it out to dry. Once dry, I fold the laundry and leave it in front of my eldest son and daughter-in-law's room. Marlene only leaves her room during mealtimes. She devours the food I make while complaining about it. Corey doesn't seem concerned about Marlene's attitude at all. Since moving in my eldest son and his wife, utility bills and food costs have doubled. Housework has doubled too. Despite all this, they don't contribute to household expenses. I felt emotionally and financially cornered. One day, I must have looked worn out.
Corey brightly remarked,
Your birthday's coming up soon.
I looked at the calendar, and sure enough, there was a mark on my birthday. A tradition Corey maintains every year.
What would you like for your present this year?
He asked. I sensed Corey was trying to cheer me up. I felt like I couldn't stay down in the dumps forever. Actually, there is something I want. I told Corey I wanted a wristwatch. The one I had was broken, and when I tried to get it repaired, they told me the parts were unavailable. Even though I don't usually wear a watch, I feel uneasy without one when I go out. Corey seemed to remember saying,
Oh yeah, it was broken.
I look forward to your wristwatch, he said with a bright smile. Seeing that smile, I find myself smiling genuinely for the first time in a while. I decided to make an effort to avoid looking miserable or irritated. A few days later, I accidentally overheard Corey and Brian talking in the yard. It seemed they were planning my birthday gift, a wristwatch. I thought about leaving, but didn't want to draw attention to myself, so I stood quietly, blending into my surroundings.
Can you buy Mom's watch with this money? I'm not sure what women like, so consult with Marlene, and let's keep it under $1,000 so Mom won't feel overwhelmed.
With that said, Corey handed Brian a bank envelope. Probably it has $1,000 in it. Brian checked the envelope and nodded.
Got it.
I felt a bit guilty for eavesdropping, but they seemed unaware of my presence, and I left. That was quite a splurge for Corey, and I couldn't help but feel delighted. Marlene's snide comments didn't bother me that day. However, that evening, I accidentally overheard something unbelievable. That night, the wind was howling, making it hard to sleep. I couldn't fall asleep and thought about having something warm to drink. Careful not to wake Corey, I slid out of bed. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed light coming through a gap in the living room door. I heard voices talking. I tiptoed closer and saw my eldest son and his wife, Marlene, sipping beers in the living room. Not wanting to deal with them, I decided to go back to my room without my warm drink. Just then I heard Marlene say, "So, for Sienna's birthday gift." I froze and listened. "We know she won't appreciate the value of a watch, so I just got her a $10 one from some knick-knack store." Marlene chuckled. I couldn't believe my ears. I thought my son would scold her, but he joined in the laughter.
Smart thinking. We can use the extra money for a trip,
my son added. I felt dizzy for a moment, surprised my son would say such a thing. And to top it off, they were mocking me, saying I wouldn't even notice it's a toy watch. Sienna's gonna cherish this toy watch. Hilarious, right? Marlene laughed so hard it sounded like she couldn't contain herself. I retreated to my room unnoticed. I felt like crying, but anger surged within me instead. Enough was enough. I vowed to make them regret their actions. You know, it's my birthday, and I was thinking of inviting my sisters and their husbands for dinner. At breakfast, I said to Marlene. This was the first time we invited my sister and her husband for a meal since we started living with the eldest son and his wife. Before we moved in together, we used to invite them for dinner frequently. But that changed, perhaps out of consideration for the eldest son and his wife. That's fine, but I won't be helping with any of the preparations. You invited them, so you handle it. It's my birthday, and she has no intention of doing any preparations. I've never heard of the birthday person having to do the hosting, but I kept my composure. Getting upset would ruin my plan. Sure, I'll whip up something delicious, I said, feigning enthusiasm. Marlene scoffed. You're really going all out for your birthday, huh? I heard her, but pretended not to. It's all for the birthday scheme. So here I am, in charge of all the preparations for my own birthday party. Cooking is a joy for me, so I'm not stressed about it. I was also looking forward to seeing my sister and her husband, Derek, who is an ex-military man. Derek's a straightforward guy who hates dishonesty. He's usually calm and kind, but as my sister often warns, you don't want to see him angry. They both get along well with Corey and are currently taking golf lessons together. Derek is the kind of guy who checked in with me when I started living with my eldest son, asking if everything was okay. I have a feeling he'll be on my side. Flipping through my collection of recipes, I decided to prepare something both my sister and her husband enjoy. I can't help but smile as I do this. Fast forward to the day of my birthday and I'm swamped. It's ironic that the birthday person should be so busy, but what can you do? Marlene is not lifting a finger, just lazing around the house. She occasionally sneaks into the kitchen to snack on something and leaves. Corey has gone to his golf classes and will bring my sister and her husband back when he returns. I hurry to get everything ready in time for the evening. As for my eldest son, he took the day off to gamble. I've always warned him to be moderate, especially since he's had a gambling issue back in college. But ever since he started dating Marlene, it seems like he's picked up his old habits again. They even go gambling together on their days off. By the evening, everything is set. Corey arrives with my sister and her husband. Derek brings me a large bouquet of flowers, instantly lifting my mood. I still love my birthday, no matter my age, especially when celebrated by those close to me. I repeatedly say, "Thank you," as I accept the bouquet. Marlene, seeing the large bouquet, mutters under her breath, "They'll just die anyway." She meant for only me to hear it, and I quietly scold her, saying, "Don't be rude." Usually I let her comment slide, but not this time. She seems surprised, then clicks her tongue in annoyance. Her pretty face is spoiled by her pettiness. My sister greets me.
It's been a while.
Marlene immediately puts on a charming smile. My sister is so naive. She believes there are no bad people in the world and has no clue about Marlene's two-faced nature. We gather in the living room for the birthday celebration. I prepared a large table with all of my sister and her husband's favorite foods, as well as Corey's. I intentionally left out my son and Marlene's favorites. Marlene seems to notice this and whispers something to my son. Ignoring her, I start the birthday party by saying, "Thank you all for coming today. It always feels good to have your birthday celebrated no matter how old you get." My sister smiles and says, "You never change, do you?" Corey and Derek start sipping their wine. My eldest son and his wife remain sulky, silently digging into their meal. They occasionally nod or hum at our conversation, not really participating otherwise. As we near the end of dinner, my sister brings out a birthday cake from the fridge. I didn't prepare a cake myself, so this is a happy surprise. Although the number of candles is random, it reminds me of childhood birthdays I spent with my sister.
We have a gift for you too. Take it as a present from all three of us,
says Corey, nudging my eldest son. I catch Marlene, flashing a sly grin at that moment. My eldest son hands me a beautifully wrapped box with a ribbon.
"This watch you want, it cost around $1,000. Take good care of it,"
he says a bit arrogantly. Corey seems a bit annoyed by his tone, but keeps it in check to maintain the atmosphere. "Thank you. It's a very expensive watch," I say, taking the ribbon box in both hands. "May I open it?" I ask Marlene, who smiles and says, "Of course." She rarely graces me with such smiles. I carefully untie the ribbon and unwrap the box. Inside is a watch with a thin leather strap. I can instantly tell it's cheap. Even its second-hand wobbles. "Is this the watch you picked out, Marlene?" "How lovely," I say, holding it up for her to see. "I chose one that would suit you, Sienna. It's a lifelong item, considering the price." Marlene grins and replies, "That's the last straw. How much more is she going to mock me?" Without a word, I toss the watch in the trash. The room falls silent.
"How dare you! Apologize to Brian and Marlene. That's a $1,000 watch. They picked it out for you."
Corey is the first to raise his voice. He grabs my shoulder, trying to force me to kneel. Marlene feigns tears, muttering, "How terrible!" I can see the corners of her mouth turning up in a smile. "What do you have to say now after seeing this?" I handed Corey a printout. It was a webpage showing the exact same watch I had just thrown away, listed at a mere $10, tax included. The package and ribbon were identical to what we had. "I know you wanted to give me a watch. Those two trampled all over that sentiment of yours," I revealed to Corey and my sibling-in-law what I had accidentally overheard. They had taken the $1,000 given to them by Corey, bought a $10 watch and planned to lie and say it was a $1,000 gift for me. They intended to use the remaining money for a vacation. In the corner of the living room were a few brochures of hot spring resorts that had been set aside while cleaning. My sibling-in-law seemed to have noticed them. "You thought I wouldn't recognize the value of things.
So you figured you could give me a toy watch without me knowing? You seem pretty pleased about it. Enough with the mockery, I told my eldest son and his spouse. It was rare for me to speak up so strongly. Sienna, that's outrageous. Stop these weird accusations. Are you trying to shame me in front of everyone? You're the one who's always lying. Marlene started accusing me of constantly lying, saying that I've been telling the neighbors she doesn't do any housework, even though she does all of it, or claiming I cooked today's meal. I was speechless. Right, Brian? Marlene turned to Brian for agreement after her rant. Yeah, that's right, Brian chimed in, probably not wanting to offend his aunt and uncle. Then Derek quietly picked up the watch from the trash can. This is a toy. It's not a $1,000 watch. With a controlled fury, he muttered this and threw the watch at the feet of my eldest son and his wife. The sound of breaking plastic filled the air. Corey, who seemed to come back to his senses after Derek's words, loosened the grip he had on my shoulder. My eldest son and his wife looked pale as ghosts. You've been making fools of us, haven't you? You could see Brian trembling at Corey's words. He knew all too well that when Corey, who rarely gets angry, does get angry, there's no controlling him. Marlene was clueless. Look, it's a waste to give expensive gifts to someone who doesn't appreciate their value. We could make better use of that money by traveling, she brazenly declared. The next moment, Corey's angry shout, "Get out!" echoed through the living room. He promptly ushered the couple out and dragged them all the way to the front door. Once outside, he locked the door behind them. From the other side of the door, the voice of my eldest son and his wife pleading to be let back in was audible. But neither Corey nor my younger sister and her husband had any intention of letting them in. Corey apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry, didn't realize all of this sooner." Hearing his sincere apology made me feel like this was the best birthday ever. After that, Corey never allowed our eldest son and his wife back into the family home. The cohabitation was over. Their belongings were sent to Marlene's parents' house, and any further contact was strictly ignored. My eldest son and his wife were suddenly homeless, taking refuge at Marlene's family home. However, there was no place for them there, as Marlene's sibling and their spouse were already living with the parents. Soon enough, they were kicked out and had to rent a small apartment to start their new life. Rumors were they had no savings, possibly spent on gambling, and Marlene's brother had to cover their apartment deposit. It seemed Marlene had already been cut off financially from her own family, with a strict warning that no more help would come. Marlene, once a housewife, was now working part-time to support their new life. As for me, life had become easier since we stopped living with them. I finally had time for myself. Corey also started to treat me better than before. Despite the difficulties, I felt like our marital bond had strengthened, and perhaps this was the happiest we've